Hi, I'm Angela, and I am a medical marijuana patient. This is a Reefer Report for February 24, 2010. The Iowa Board of Pharmacy voted to recommend the reclassification of marijuana to a Schedule II drug as the first step to legalize the medicine in the state. Here's WHO-TV with more. Oh, and keep an eye out for Reverend Ray, one of your fellow Reefer Report viewers. Thanks, Ray, for getting out there and informing our government and the public.
Curious.
The unanimous approval Wednesday brought a round of applause from advocates of medical marijuana.
I have multiple sclerosis, and you may look at me and think, well, this guy doesn't really look that sick or whatever, but, you know, I'm able to maintain my health because I use marijuana.
Until today, marijuana has been classified as a Schedule I drug in Iowa, considered to have no medical value. But after months of research and public hearings, pharmacy officials agreed it's time for a change.
In order to be able to further the possibility of using medical marijuana in Iowa, that's what we wanted to do, was get it out of that C1 class.
The board is recommending the legislature classify marijuana as a Schedule II drug, meaning there is a risk for abuse, but also the potential for benefit.
The human response is to try and help people, and the human response has to be weighed against the legal ramifications.
Medical marijuana is already legal in 14 other states, but board members seem to agree that none of those states have gotten the policies quite right.
I think among the biggest concerns is could be fraught with abuse.
To avoid that, their recommendation came with a requirement. The board is asking lawmakers to form a special committee that would create specific rules about how medical marijuana can be used.
Our idea is to get input from everybody out there that's going to be involved in the process.
The task force, they say, should include everyone from hospice workers to the Attorney General. A collaborative effort board members hope will safely open the door to important research.
People could actually start legitimately looking at it without the fear of reprisals.
In Des Moines, Elizabeth Kling, Channel 13 News.
The Iowa Board of Pharmacy is now the first in the nation to make such a move on medical marijuana, but it's unlikely lawmakers will have time to address it this session.
South Dakota is on its way to voting on medical marijuana later this year. KSFY offers a bit of commentary with this report.
Morning, of course, the big one. Thousands of signatures in support of legalizing medical marijuana now in the hands of South Dakota lawmakers.
And if everything goes as it might, we may actually have a public vote on the issue. Action News reporter Jim Nelson joining us now, working the story live this morning. Jim, they have 30-some thousand signatures. What happens now?
Now they have to make sure that those 32,000 signatures are valid. And they have to verify that there aren't multiples, that there aren't people signing more times than they should. But in total, again, 32,000 signatures, which is twice as many as drive organizers needed to push the measure to a public vote. But now the state needs to make sure that the amount and validity of those signatures is accurate. If those officials find those to be valid, or at least 17,000 of them, that measure will be on the ballot in November. Opponents say it's too dangerous because of the dangers of marijuana and the possibility of addiction. And while many supporters acknowledge some of those cons, they say there are more positives. One of those supporters is Emmett Reistroffer, whose mother suffers from lupus.
I have seen how this illness has affected her, and I know that medical marijuana offers tremendous benefits for people who suffer from lupus, multiple sclerosis, cancer, glaucoma, HIV, and AIDS.
Of course, that's just one side to the story. We've got more sides to the story online. We've been showing them throughout the morning. Now, Sean and Mary, if this were to eventually pass, South Dakota would become the 15th state to have some form of legalized medical marijuana. Wow.
Very interesting stuff, to say the least.
Thanks, Jim.
Local VA hospitals in New Mexico were formally warned not to recommend medical marijuana for patients or face losing DEA prescribing rights, among other absurdities. Apparently you can fight for your country, but your country won't do the same for you. Here's KOB with this.
There are more than 1,200 New Mexicans legally using medical marijuana under state law. About 25% of them are veterans returning from war with post-traumatic stress disorder. But at VA hospitals across the country, including here in Albuquerque, doctors are being told not to help their patients get pot prescriptions. Why? Because medical marijuana is still illegal under federal law. A memo sent out to VA doctors says if they help patients get medical marijuana by filling out forms, it could mean their license to prescribe drugs could be revoked and could even result in criminal charges.
Unfortunately, that doesn't change the fact that the federal government still has medical marijuana as an illegal substance, and there's nothing we can do about federal laws.
Deborah Busmeyer of the state's Department of Health says veterans with VA doctors will have to go somewhere else to get a medical cannabis prescription.
The best our patients can do is try and find resources within New Mexico to take advantage of our state law.
A spokesperson for the local VA hospital says veterans who participate in the state's medical cannabis program will not be refused other treatment at the VA hospital. Currently, the state says there are about 5 nonprofits in New Mexico providing medical cannabis. Back to you, Tom.
Thank you, Jeremy. Post-traumatic stress disorder is by far the most common illness claimed by New Mexicans with prescriptions for medical pot. According to the Department of Health, cancer patients have received the second highest number of medical marijuana prescriptions, with about 200 people getting them. HIV/AIDS is the third most common condition among medical marijuana users.
Washington, D.C. is looking at ways to approach regulating the district's medical marijuana law that was unblocked in December of last year. WUSA 9 has more.
Of whether or not I was going to keep my kidneys or break a law, I'm going to break that law.
Steph Scher tells D.C. City Council she has to use marijuana to treat the pain of her severe back injury. She says other drugs were threatening to shut down her kidneys, and so her doctor secretly suggested she try an illegal alternative.
It's humiliating and embarrassing to wait in parking lots for some kid to show up with marijuana.
City Council's David Catania and Phil Mendelson spearheaded the hearing on an amendment to the medical marijuana bill that passed in 1998, legalizing use in the district. But Congress had blocked that law until this past December, and now the city is trying to work out how this groundbreaking legislation will finally be implemented. Dr. Pierre Vigilance of the D.C. Health Department says the drug will provide relief.
There is documented evidence that demonstrates the drug's capacity to reduce nausea and vomiting, stimulate hunger in chemotherapy and AIDS patients, and in general to relieve pain.
What we want to avoid, either in being overly restrictive, way too restrictive, or being too permissive.
There are still many unanswered questions, such as where will the pot be distributed? How will you register those who say they need it? And what about the inevitable users who aren't really sick but just trying to get high?
It may be good to locate them in hospitals or in pharmacies.
The D.C. Health Department says it expects to work on these answers in the coming month. Elizabeth Gia, 9 News.